Good. Excellent. Well, we just kind of clapped for the men's basketball team, so I really wanted to begin there because I've been doing a lot of soul searching the last weekend. I was so sad yesterday after the game. How many of you watched the game? Oh, are you crushed? I'm so crushed. Was that not a travel? I watched it 100 times. He traveled. I'm telling you, he traveled. But that's the way it goes, right? Sometimes you get the call. Sometimes you don't get the call. Sometimes you advance. Sometimes you don't advance. But how do you pivot? And I think that's such a beautiful place to start because that's exactly what business is about. That's exactly what your future and your journey once you leave Colorado State is all about. It's about having a goal, having a dream, reaching for it, but what happens when things change in life? What happens when your personal life changes? What happens when that career path changes? What happens when adversity comes and you have to get around it to still try and reach your goal? This is such a beautiful spot. The Laurie Student Center did not look like this when I went to college here. But looking out, like I literally see my hopes and dreams out there. I see myself on that campus. I see myself playing lacrosse right there on the club lacrosse team. I see myself hiking up to the A. I see myself going to the rec center. I see myself walking campus. And I see this girl who had really big dreams, big dreams. And I had no idea that the dream I'm living out today even existed when I was on campus there. So I will get through my story. I will get through some of the adversities I've had to get through to be a trailblazer, to be a game changer in sports media and in baseball specifically. But I just wanted to start with that NCAA game because after the game, it really got me thinking about the fact that it was so hard for the Colorado State Rams to even get to where they got. 352 teams participate in NCAA Division I basketball. 352. The Rams were one of 32 left. Okay, so let's just do some math here, which is not my strongest suit. My dad was a math teacher, but I didn't do great in the whole scheme. So now I work in stats. It all doesn't make sense, but a calculator is available. So I worked on that last night. So 352 teams in Division I NCAA men's basketball. That means you have a 0.2% chance to walk away holding the trophy at the end of the season. 0.2% chance to be the champions in college basketball. That is absolutely crazy. You have an 18% chance to even make it to the field of 64. 18% of those teams are the only ones that get to participate in March Madness. 9% end up in the field of 32. 9% have to win one game on either Thursday or Friday to make it to the weekend. The Rams were part of 9%. That is so incredibly amazing. And yet, if you were to sit there and tell a team, or you were to sit there and tell an individual at the beginning of an endeavor, hey, there's only a 0.2% chance you're gonna make it. How many people do you think would bail before they even started working for it? A lot. Because I see it every day. People bail when there's really not an opportunity and a chance to even get to the finish line. But not the Rams. They went to work. I mean, these are guys that started out their season not so great. The record did not look good in non-conference play. It was like, what is going on? We thought we had it all together. We thought this was going to be a team. And all of a sudden, something clicked for them. None of us are privy to it. We weren't in every practice. We weren't in the weight room. We weren't eating right. We weren't disciplined with them, going to bed, getting their sleep, getting their rest, doing their studies, finding chemistry. We weren't there with them. But you watched all of a sudden something on that basketball court clicked throughout the course of the season. And they went on a win streak. And they didn't only do it in close game fashion, they kicked some butt down the stretch. They beat some teams like handedly that they shouldn't have had any business beating by that many points. They went into the Mountain West tournament. They survived the first game. It didn't look pretty, but they survived. They got onto the semifinals. Dominated. They got to the championship game. Dominated. I mean, it was unbelievable the run that they went on and how they fought together. They found each other. They found teamwork. They found the adversity, and they got around it to get to the dance and give themselves a chance. And we could all be sitting here today going, oh my gosh, we're going to the Sweet 16. Like, that is unbelievable. And they're not. But does that mean they had a losing season? I don't think so. I think they gained so much. And I think in 2 years, in 1 year, in 10 years, in 20 years, if you ask any of those members of that team, whether it was the basketball players or the coaching staff or the support staff or the athletic department staff, they're going to look back on that team and learn a lot of lessons that probably carried them to other successes in their life. So just think about the possibilities when you think about your future And, really you go, is that possible? Because for me, that's where my journey begins. When I was a little girl growing up in the 80s and 90s, I probably had a 0.2% chance of actually becoming a sports broadcaster. That was just the reality of it. You turn on the TV, you watch sports, you heard a man's voice. You turn on local news, you mostly saw men talking about sports. And you really didn't even see women playing sports on TV back then. So the likelihood of me being able to see someone that looked like me, sounded like me, and then me have this big dream to do that, that wasn't really possible. And if you wanted to go even further to my current job title of being a primary television voice, play-by-play in Major League Baseball, there was probably a 0% chance that that was going to happen for me. But it didn't stop me from dreaming. It didn't stop me from finding a passion. And that passion, once I found it, it unlocked something inside of me that I was not willing to give up. At every turn, when every single person along the way, there was always one that would tell me, this is never going to happen for you. I didn't listen to them because I felt inside that this is what I wanted to do, and I was going to work hard, and I was going to dream big, and I was even going to have dreams I didn't know existed, but I was just going to go, and I was going to go and go and go until I couldn't go anymore, until I got as far as I could. And I'm going to tell you right now, sitting here today, as a 42-year-old working mom, I have 2 young children at home, I'm living out my dream in broadcasting, I'm doing all these wonderful things I love doing. I still don't think I'm done dreaming. I think there's more out there. And that is the best way to live. And I hope for you guys in college, sitting here now, that those dreams never get too big for you. Don't dream small, dream big. That's where I'm going to start with my story. So I was a young girl growing up in Aurora. My dad was a high school baseball coach. So out of the gate, I was exposed to sports very early in my life. And I was exposed to being a coach's kid, which in our family meant you were at the baseball field a lot. Whether you wanted to be or not, you were there. So I had to learn pretty quickly to either participate and get involved or to be bored. There weren't cell phones for us back then to dive into, so it was literally like drawing in the dirt or jumping rope or making up games with imaginary friends as a little girl. Or I could grab this glove and I could go out for when my dad was coaching camps and I could participate. So that's what I chose to do, and that was probably a very early sign that I was ready to go against the grain early. I was the only girl in camp. I was there. I quickly heard from the boys, you're a girl, you can't play, and it just lit this little fire in me like, all right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove to you I can. And I would just go at it, and I would go for it, day in, day out. Once the baseball season came for my dad, I would learn to keep score. I would sit in the stands and follow every pitch. I would ask him questions at home, which are probably the early signs that I was going to be a reporter because I was questioning his moves during the games and why he did this or why he didn't do that. And those were kind of those early memories of really falling in love with sports. And I think that's the beauty of growing up and being able to say, okay, I'm going to pick a career. Like, it doesn't even feel like real life that you can pick a career in sports and you can get paid for it and you can go to games and you can enjoy them in a way that other people pay to go experience, right? We work in an entertainment business, so people pay to go do what we get paid to do. That's a pretty cool way to figure out a job. But for me, it was, just falling in love with the game, falling in love with the idea that, sports, everything it taught you. I loved competing. I loved getting out there and trying to get better. I loved having a goal and trying to reach for it. And soon enough, my early stages of baseball turned into me playing softball competitively, growing up on that circuit. And I played basketball. I played lacrosse in high school. Loved all those things. I really played almost every single sport you could imagine and had to narrow it down once I got to high school. For seasons, and I got involved in school in so many different areas, DECA being one of them, which was a business club, and really finding a passion for business there, and again, competing in a business sense, and how much fun that was. And so really when I look back at high school, I did all of these things. Was I really great at one of them? Probably not, but was I okay at all of them and found my place in each of them? Yes, and I think I found my place by being a good teammate, by showing up every day, by, again, having a goal, learning to kind of, figure out all the steps I needed to reach that goal, and then work really hard at them. Things didn't come super easy for me. I think I had a gift, naturally to be an athlete, but I think I had a better gift to be a leader and to be on the field and try and bring a group together and try and bring out the best in each of my teammates, the ones that probably had more talent than me, and learn from them and grow from that. So those were kind of some early, stage development things that I learned from sports and that I loved about sports. When I got to Colorado State, and even right before that, I will say my senior year of high school, my aha moment came when I finally did see a woman on television that looked like me and sounded like me on Monday Night Football, and her name's Melissa Stark. And you may recognize that name because you can see her now all these decades later still covering football in the NFL, and she's on Sunday Night Football as a sideline reporter. But that was the first time I was watching with my dad, like we did every single Monday night, and I was just like, that's it, Dad, like that's what I want to do. And both of us having a very naive moment of him looking at me, looking back at the TV, and going, yeah, I could see you doing that. It was simple, it was easy. But my dad, I think, had to be the one, a man that I looked up to, a man I admired, speaking some truth into my life. My dad had zero clue how competitive the world of sports media was. I had zero clue how competitive it was. But he gave me an inner voice, an inner confidence to have a dream and to start building that dream. And that was my only goal coming to Colorado State, was to still be able to play sports, and I was able to play club lacrosse here, and to immediately get involved in being a broadcaster. So I was admitted into business school, and I was so excited to get started in that realm. There wasn't a sports program, and I'm so glad there is some classes now that you can take in terms of business and sports. But back then, I just really kind of dove into marketing and got going, and told all my marketing teachers, like, but I want to be a broadcaster, and I'm trying to figure this out. So they sent me across campus to the journalism school, and I'm sitting there in the dean's office, and we were kind of just discussing some things, and I started to realize, like, if I go into this major, you have to write a lot. I was not really into the writing situation. Like, where's the talking school? Immediately did a U-turn, like pointed me to speech comm, and there I was. So I didn't want to give up business. I double majored in business and speech communication, and both taught me so many wonderful things, so many wonderful lessons in life. And I think the greatest tool I have coming away from a marketing degree is, as a broadcaster, you're selling. That's what you do during a game. You're selling a team, you're selling the game, you're selling excitement, and you're selling yourself all the time. Outside of just doing a game, you're selling yourself for jobs constantly. So I really did learn a lot, and I think marketing was very applicable to what I ended up doing in a broadcasting realm. And then, getting to have that well-rounded experience on campus, I immediately figured out that, you can actually be a broadcaster now. And I ran into what college, or what campus television is, CTV. And luckily, I was able to kind of get some hands-on experience, get involved. And then I quickly realized, I'm gonna go over to the athletic department and see if I can get involved there. And so I was able to get on board with the Clear Channel radio station, who then had the rights for Colorado State football and basketball. And I did anything like they wanted me to. I was like, I'm gonna intern for you. I forced myself on them. I don't even think they gave me a job. I was like, I'm here, I'm gonna show up every day, have something for me to do. So I did everything from a marketing campaign for the radio station and making up these little stickers that we gave away on game day for the football during college football Saturday, to going and keeping just stats during the basketball game, so I could sit next to the announcer and hear how he called the game and watch him interact, and then eventually talked my way into having some sort of segment on their show, on their channel. And we created a spot where every Friday we called it the Prep Sports Spotlight. And so I would go out to different high schools around the area in Fort Collins, and I would make relationships with the football coaches and the basketball coaches and the softball coaches and the volleyball coaches. And I would find time that I could go out and take my little tape recorder and interview them about what's going on campus and their student athletes, and then go back to the radio station and I'd cut together a little 5-minute spot that they'd play every Friday. And that was just my own little world. It was my own way of creating what I wanted to be doing, projecting myself into the future and saying, I want to be a sports broadcaster. I'm just going to do it. And, whether I got paid for it or not, which I didn't get paid for it, I just did it because I knew that was experience, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I can tell you right now, today, that I had just as much fun being the prep sports reporter in Fort Collins as I do now being the athletics play-by-play. That's just where passion comes from. And when you find your passion, you can't let it go. You got to see it through, and you got to really put everything that you have into each little step of the way, because it's really about the work and about the journey and not the destination. And I know that sounds so cliche, but there's a learning moment and a teaching moment and a growing moment in every job stop for me, when I look back on, that I lean into as I continue to move up the ladder in my career. So that was kind of how I got experience in college, and how I had started to forge this name for myself and wanting to be a broadcaster. And every summer, I ended up taking an internship to really get a different experience. And I'll credit my brother for this. He is the older, wiser one, the smarter one, the one that was really good at the few things that he did. He played baseball. He was really smart, and he went to Pepperdine. And he would call me complaining on Saturdays because our school at Colorado State had a football team, and he didn't, as he was sitting at the beach studying. So I didn't really feel sorry for him, but he gave me some really good advice. And he called me I think he was a junior and I was a freshman. And he said, I was in LA today, or on campus, and I saw a flyer for an internship at Fox Sports. Like, you should apply for it. And I was like, no, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. It's summertime, I'm ready. He's like, no, you need to do this. Like, if you wanna get ahead, you need to try to get this internship. So I'm really glad I listened to him, because I went for this internship, and it turned out that it had nothing to do with sports, and it was on the Fox lot in Los Angeles. And I wasn't in a department where they were making movies, or even that they were creating content for TV shows and movies. It was literally just a pitch office. So my boss that I worked for that summer, he would take meetings with different writers that would come in and pitch him shows. Some were television shows, some were movies. 90% of them hit the cutting room floor. But very fascinating to think of, all these people and their dreams and their 0.2% and putting themselves out there, and really getting to witness that through a revolving door all summer. And I remember having a meeting with him in his office, and he asked me, he's like, well, what do you want to do in our business? And I told him, I said, well, I'm going to be a football sideline reporter one day. And I'll never forget the sound that came out of his mouth next. It was like audible laughing, like belly laughing in my face. And I was like, what's so funny? He's like, yeah, you're never going to do that. Like, no, that's not going to happen for you. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, I've been working for you all summer. You've never even, I didn't know you knew my name, and you called me in for this meeting, and now you're laughing about my hopes and dreams. So I think that was my first gut check of wow, this business can be really harsh, and just because I have big dreams doesn't mean, other people see the world that way. And I think it was a reality check for me. Do I really want to do this? How bad do I want to do this? And what's funny is, let's see, that internship was 2002, so all these years later in 2025, I still get text messages from this guy. And it's so cool. We've connected, and he's reached back out every time I've gotten a big job or gotten a big step in life. And it means so much, because I think he remembers also laughing in my face. And I got to show him and prove to him that I did the work. I took whatever his advice was, laughing, and I turned the other way, and I went to work, and I went and got something that I thought I could do, even though he didn't believe in me. So that was just a very interesting side note to a career step that could have really gone another way. I could have left that internship and been like, yeah, he's right. I have no business doing this. There's not a lot of women doing this, but I didn't. I really took my own passion inside, and I said, forget you. I'm going to keep moving on. Thanks for your internship. But I think it was a good moment too to realize you need to have a network. You need to have people who do have your back, and how do you find those people? And I'm really grateful that I did end up building relationships through other internships I had at local TV stations that built me up, that spent the time to help create a reel, help me work on my craft, get better, all of those things. Well, end college now, fast forward, and we were in the lacrosse national championships, and we're going to play in, I forget where they were even being played at, somewhere in the Midwest. And they decide they're going to televise them, televise club lacrosse championships in 2004. That's mind-blowing to me, because regional sports networks were kind of just getting their foothold. Some new national networks were popping up, and college sports television was one of them. So through a relationship that I had built, this lady, Stacy Pressman, was an editor for ESPN the magazine, which you guys probably don't remember because we don't have physical magazines that come in the mail anymore, but it was really big time back then. She had come out to campus to do a feature on one of the Colorado State football players who was a friend of mine. And he had just happened to drop my name to her because, you know, everyone kind of knew what I wanted to do. And, you know, I'd been working with the football team. So he was getting this feature written on him, and he just happened to drop my name to Stacy. And so she followed up, which I thought was so cool. We ended up, you know, emailing, corresponding for a while. And I told her, like, you know, I'm going out to play lacrosse. We're in the national championships and coming up, and I heard they're being televised. And she's like, oh my gosh, my friend is actually producing them. And it was just this crazy, like, realizing, you know, small world connection. She goes, let me put you in touch. Like, I'm gonna send him your reel of, like, the stuff you've done in college, and maybe he can use you. And through that relationship, he called me and he's like, listen, we can't pay you or anything, but, like, we kind of floated this idea of having a student reporter, which would be really fun. And since you're going to be there playing, we'll do a report on you and your team. And then if you guys don't make it to the championship game, like, I'll throw you a bone and you can just do the sidelines. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So little did I know it became a tryout. Like, they were actually going to be hiring that fall in 2004 for their national sideline reporter as they're launching this network. And I did sidelines for the championship game, and I did it for the men's game. And then they called me, and, like, within a couple weeks, they were flying me to New York to interview for the national sideline reporter job. I mean, I went to New York, I did this interview, I'm like, this is unbelievable. I land the job, and I was like, this is it. Like, I did it. There's my goal. I accomplished it. Like, check it off, patting myself on the back, celebrating. 3 weeks into the college football season, 3 weeks, they laid off half of everybody because they were so over budget. So I went, it was my very first experience of being like, I did it, I put in all this work, I had this goal, I accomplished it, here I am, thinking everything is in front of me. This is gonna be a 40-year career as a national sideline reporter for football, and, like, the dream is done 3 weeks in. Like, what do? I moved to Los Angeles. I thought I was gonna be living in the big city, flying all over the country, and now I don't have a job. So I had to pivot. Like, it was my first opportunity where I really had to dig deep. Like, what are you gonna do? What's your plan B? You always have to have a plan B, by the way. Just note, because that's how life goes. But I just picked up a job. I worked at Starbucks. I was, like, you know, a barista by day. I was picking up side gigs. I was searching for anything that happened. And, like, finally, I was like, how bad do you want this? I still wanted it. I still wanted it really bad. So I ended up getting a job in Flint, Michigan. Have you guys heard of Flint, Michigan? Water crisis, probably. I drank the water, by the way, in 2005. So we'll see how that ends up. But I took it. I was like, this is it. This is your chance. So I went from being this national sideline reporter for college football, the goal, the dream, to going to Flint, Michigan to cover sports. And living this, like, I don't think the sun came out more than, like, 3 weeks of the year I was there. And it was very opposite of Colorado weather. It was hard to deal with, but again, it really tested my passion. And so I got, you know, as soon as I got into that station, that's all I had was the dream and the job. So I dove in head first, right? You do everything you can. And looking back, that was such an amazing spot in time for me, because I had to really test if I loved it and if I wanted it enough. And it also didn't look like what I set out to do, right? I set out to be a football sideline reporter, and here I am at a high school basketball game, or going to do a feature story on the local swim coach, or I'm at this golf tournament. Like, do I still love this? It didn't look like I painted the picture, but it was still the work. And I learned so much from that year that I was in Flint. I ended up getting an opportunity to coach lacrosse at UCLA, so I took it because it was going back to Los Angeles, and it felt like it was a ticket to get out, and it was awesome too, and I'm glad I did that, and I'm glad I had that chance and opportunity, and I loved coaching, and I loved pouring into those kids, but I also just thought in the back of my mind, this isn't what you set out to do. I just had the voice in my head keep coming back. So through some twists and turns, got some other jobs, ended up, you know, working at a local station in Santa Barbara to try to get some experience. Just kept, you know, pushing forward, whatever it might take. And then the dream job really did come calling, and I got an opportunity to interview for the reporter job with the San Diego Padres in 2007. And going down to San Diego, I like just started thinking about it, and I was like, wow, like this would be really cool to work in baseball. Like, I grew up in baseball. I never thought about working in it. When, you know, we were growing up, the Rockies came in '93, regional sports television kind of exploded, and, like, 97, 98, but I never really saw a woman doing baseball or a woman on TV talking about the game. So getting that job in San Diego, I sat at this interview with my boss, and it was a very informal interview, but I remember he said, "Do you know how to keep score?" And I kind of laughed, like that one boss I had laughed in my face. I kind of laughed back at this guy, like, of course, everyone knows how to keep score. And I started to realize, like, he was testing my knowledge of the game through how we were just having a conversation. And he's told me since that moment, like, I knew you were going to be green as a reporter, but I knew your baseball knowledge would shine and you'd grow in TV. So I hired you for your baseball knowledge, and I hired you for your passion and what you wanted to do, and I knew we could grow you. And I'm so grateful that he gave me that chance, because going to San Diego and getting that job really changed the direction and the course of everything in my life. Like, I'm now entering my 19th season covering Major League Baseball, and I've had a variety of jobs within it. But it just takes me back to telling everyone in high school and college that I wanted to be a football sideline reporter, because my dream was really big, but it was also really narrow. Like, there was a lot more out there for me that I hadn't even seen yet. And so I still feel that way. People ask me today, like, oh, now that you're doing play-by-play, like, what's your big, goal? What do you want to do? Like, I want to be exactly where I am now and keep growing and learning and keep this, wide open vision board, because you never know what relationship you make or you connect with, or you never know, what intersection comes to you that you might want to take a right turn or a left turn and kind of change things and open it up. So that's kind of how I ended up getting into baseball. Long-winded story. And, in getting there and being there, I really dove into the job and loving the job and, like, being a sideline reporter and exactly what I wanted to do. And then I grew into being a host of a pre- and post-game show. It was not on my radar to do play-by-play. I'd had people ask me over the course of my career if that'd be interesting to me, and I was like, no, like, I can't imagine doing that, right? But it sometimes takes people who know more about you and working with you to push you off a cliff. And that's what happened for me, and I'm so, so glad it did. But I had relationships after 5 years with the Padres. I ended up getting a job with the Colorado Rockies, and for me, coming home was so special, and getting to work in that organization and on TV and covering that team for 12 years. But I had a producer who looked at me one day, and she's like, listen, we need to have a backup play-by-play person. It's only for 10 games. I don't want to go out and hire somebody because it's not a full-time job, but we really want you to do it. Like, we think you're ready. We love how you see the game. We want you to try it. And it was the scariest thing that anyone's ever suggested to me. But I said yes. And really, in looking back on my life, and this is another thing that I really want to kind of hit home today, is, like, say yes to opportunities, because whether they scare you or not, whether they're the right thing or not, there's always something in there that you can take away. There's always a piece of it in there that you can add to your resume, so to speak, whether it's your personal resume, your career resume in life, where those pieces all add up over time to kind of make this complete picture of who you are, who you end up being in your career or in your personal life. And so saying yes, again, changed everything for me. And was it perfect? No. Was it awful? Probably. But we all lived through it, and I learned so much, and then I got to work on it. And now I had a new goal, and I had a new vision, I had a new dream. All of this is happening as I just became a mom. So talk about things that I would have never had on my bingo card. It was like, you're going to get a new career within your career path that you're already kind of on, but it's a whole new step up, different level. And while you're doing that, you have to keep a human alive and try and figure out how to do all that, and travel schedules. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I think for me, having more on my plate actually helps me focus a little bit more on all the things that matter to me. And so I didn't have time to think in that moment if I could do this or not, because I was so worried about, like, how am I going to also, do this while having a baby and needing to travel with the baby, and whatever that entails for our personal life, and trying to keep everything together. So I took that job, and I loved it. I grew in it. I ended up adding college basketball to the list. And then a year ago, I got a phone call that really changed everything when they said, we want you to fly out to Oakland and interview to be the play-by-play voice full-time for the Athletics. And having a significant title to it, and being the first woman primary play-by-play, which is a mouthful, by the way. The first woman primary play-by-play broadcaster in MLB history. I knew it means so much. There's a lot of significance to that because I think of all the women who have come before me, or all the women who have dreamed of working in sports or dreamed of doing something that they ended up ultimately hitting a ceiling or running into a brick wall on because it wasn't the right time in our society. And I feel really lucky that it was the right time and I was able to kind of take a door that had been cracked and push it open a little bit more. And my hopes and my dreams and my goals are that I keep that door open and I do a good enough job long enough that a lot of women keep running through that door, and a lot of women can see something that looks, like they do and sounds like they do and has a passion to do something they want to do, and they can also run through that door. And so along the year, there were so many challenges for me last year. First of all, I took a job with a sports team that was ending a 6-decade-long run in the city they're in Oakland, and a fan base that was really angry because the team was leaving. And they're building a ballpark in Las Vegas. But when I took the job last year, there was the possibility that they would stay in Oakland until their new ballpark in Vegas was going to be done in 2028. And 6 weeks into the job, we found out that they were no longer going to be in Oakland. Financially, from a city perspective, it wasn't going to work out for them. The city came back on them since they were leaving and raised their rent at their home ballpark in the Coliseum by almost $20 million a year. So they decided it was time to leave early and they were gonna move to Sacramento. So 6 weeks into taking this job in Oakland, which I knew was gonna come to an end eventually in that city, they're already moving on to another city before they eventually go to the city that they're gonna land in. So I had a lot of layers that I was dealing with as the voice of that team, and trying to make sense of it, for fans, and trying to make sense of it for us and what we were doing. On top of that, I'm also a new voice in their market, not just a female versus male voice, but a new voice, period. They had a play-by-play voice that was fired the season before, and a lot of people really loved that person, and I wasn't that person all of a sudden. So I was up against that, and then I was up against being a new voice in the game, being a voice that not a lot of people hear as background noise to an entire summer. That's really kind of what baseball tends to be in a lot of people's homes, is something that's on. But it was coming out very different for a lot of fans. So there were a lot of challenges and all those things, and still trying to stay true to myself and my own voice, and having to navigate kind of just a lot of your internal voice, your own confidence, and again, testing your passion and why you're here, and what you want to do and what you want to be doing. And so now, as I enter this new year, we're going to Sacramento. We're going to deal with a brand new fan base, all of those things of adversity, where I have to keep going back to the drawing board of what is that passion? Why are you here? What makes it so exciting for you to get up every day and get moving? And for me, a lot of times I kept hitting this wall of being I just want to call someone. I just want to call someone who's done this before. And I realized there's no one that's done this before. You're literally walking on your own path. And I did have a phone call last year with Drew Goodman, who's the voice of the Rockies, and Drew and I had worked together for 12 years, and I was kind of trying to explain some stuff to him and get some advice, and he's the one that said back to me, Jenny, I can't give you any because I don't know what shoes you're walking in. And that just hit me so hard. And it also reminded me of all those moments, those little boys at camp that told me I can't do this, the guy at my internship that was my boss that laughed in my face. And I was like, no, this is what you were made to do. You were made to walk in something where you have to figure it out on your own, and you have to sit there and really rely on your passion. I know I keep coming back to that, but that is truly why I'm here. I have a passion to do this. And so I think that comes tested when you hit those points of adversity. So for me, I think those are the kind of the lessons I wanted to hit on today in my story and in my path. I'm gonna use my phone to do it. First, it's persistence pays off, right? The idea that even when people reject you or your hopes or your dreams, you're able to sustain the path. You're able to see beyond that. You're able to make sure that your goals and your desires aren't of those what everyone else tells you they should be, right? They're not the reflection of the world, but of what's inside of you. And so I think it's really important to stay focused on that persistence of where you want to be. Build your network. Have mentors. Have connections that open doors for you. I had a lot of those along my path, as I mentioned in some of my story. But also have people that you trust. I think I'm talking about it from a broadcaster perspective of where, we work in an industry that's entertainment-based. So 50% of the people will like who you are and how you deliver it, and 50% of the people won't. I mean, the approval rating is that of a president. It's just not going to be great because, again, people have different tastes. But find the people in your circle who you trust. Not the people that are gonna blow smoke up your you-know-what, but the people who are going to be able to give you the best criticisms and to point you in the right direction and to also help you problem solve. And keep that circle small. It gets smaller and smaller the older you get. But as you network and build, find the people that you can trust that can really be a reflection of where you want to go in your goals. Confidence is key. Like, no matter what you want to do in a business sense, no matter where you want to go, just do it wholeheartedly. Do it with everything you have, and keep your confidence so high as you walk into rooms and as you walk into meetings, and even in places you feel like you might not belong. You'll eventually belong there if you continue to keep confidence and to keep working for the passions that you have desired for. Okay, adapt and keep learning. This is such a big one, and it kind of goes to my plan B. I work in a business of something right now that is literally imploding and ever changing. And when you think about sports rights, it's hard to figure out where to find your teams right now, right? It's hard to go, okay, I want to watch this game tonight. What channel is it on? Because everything's changing all the time. Regional sports rights are changing, national sports rights are changing. When you think about college sports, conferences are changing, right? Colorado State will eventually be in the Pac-12 in a couple of years, which is really exciting. But change is the only constant in sports, really. And in sports television, that's even more true. And so I think the ability to adapt to the situation and to figure out how you belong in that situation becomes so key. And so for me, it's like you can sit in this dying industry, or for me, a lot of sideline reporters now are getting knocked off of certain broadcasts. So if that's the only goal that I maintained, and I wasn't able to see beyond that and expand into hosting and to wanting to figure out how to do play-by-play and to make that more of a dream or a goal, I might not have a job right now. Like, it might be obsolete. So finding avenues where you can continue to adapt and adjust to how industry does. And then the final thing for me is pay it forward. I am so lucky that last year I was able to kind of create a job at the university here at Colorado State, the executive and residence program for President Amy Parsons, and work closely with Dean Walker at the school. And it's been really rewarding for me to kind of see where kids are in college now and be able to do some mentorship programs and some speaking engagements on campus, and really also just sit in meetings and identify the future and the direction of college campuses and athletics and where things are moving and going. But I've always felt like I knocked on so many doors and I wrote so many emails and I picked up the phone and called so many people to ask for career advice that I have to do the same. And so my Twitter's open, my Instagram's open, my LinkedIn's open. Like, I try to get back to as many people as I can that ask for career advice. And I have a lot of people reach out that want to shadow or want to just come and in a day in a life and kind of watch what I do. And I really try and do as many of those as I can because I had so many people help me along the way. And I think that it's really rewarding, number one, but it's also necessary because that's how I was able to kind of get into this business and break in to this industry. So all that being said, as you sit here today and you think about what you want to do in the business world, sports or otherwise, I hope you keep an open mind to dreaming really big about it and what that might look like for you. Maybe it's being the president of a company or the CEO of a business that might not even exist right now that you're going to invent. Don't let somebody tell you that you can't do that. There will be challenges along the way, absolutely, but continue to work hard, to dig in, to build relationships, and most importantly, be willing to adapt, whatever that goal might be, or take the jobs that might not seem like they're gonna get you there. Keep saying yes, keep growing, keep learning, and ultimately, keep dreaming. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully this works. Okay, we do have a time for a couple questions, if anyone has any top of your mind. Right here, perfect.
Hi. So working in the sports field, like, I'm sure you've encountered a ton of misogyny. So how have you overcome that? And just how do you deal with it?
It's a great question. I feel like I've gotten this question a lot in my career. Like, again, I said I've been in baseball for 19 years now, and I've been getting this question for 19 years. I don't think I thought a lot about it when I was having those big dreams when I was in college and high school. And, getting into the business, I don't think I thought a lot about it. But looking back, where it really, I think, got to me was I always felt like I had to prove my worth to be there. I always felt like I had to prove how much knowledge I had. And I always felt like I had to, sit there and almost like this resume that you're rattling off every time when you're talking to somebody to be like, I belong here. Like, my dad was a coach, I played sports, I know everything about this, right? And learning to let that go was really hard for me, and finding this inner confidence of people are gonna realize that quickly if you just show up and do the work. And so I started doing a lot more of that. I think now we live in an age where I see more women in the day-to-day than I ever saw when I started 19 years ago, especially in baseball. I was probably one of the only women working on our staff for the Padres at that time. Fast forward 19 years, when I was at the Rockies, my producer was a female and my director was a female. So those are people that would sit in the truck and create the show. We had 2 females on air, and then within the team, there was a trainer that was a female. There were PR people that were female. So when I got on a plane with the team when we traveled for work, I was always around women. So I didn't notice it as much. And then this last year when I took the A's job, I was often the only woman on the plane outside of our flight attendants that were on the plane. And that was a weird feeling for me because I forgot I've just been around so many women the last couple of years. So I would say it's really cool because there's so many women and it's growing in that way. There's also a lot more decision makers that are women, so they're the ones that need to be in place, I think, personally, to start changing the game and to start making decisions to change the game. I will say I'm long-winded getting back to your question because I think for me, all of those things build up my confidence that when I come across situations that feel misogynistic, I can kind of roll them off and walk away from them, or I don't lean into them too much. But if I wanted to give them any credit and thought I could, you can just open my Twitter account right now and you'll see lots of them. They're awful. I get awful messages every day. And I think you just have to come to a place where, again, you earned the right to be there, you know what you're doing, you're working hard, and go with that. I think for me, again, being the only female that calls baseball games, there's other females that also do backup play-by-play, so there's a couple of us. But I think where I run into it is in a egotistical way, with counterparts, especially last year, where they would just be well, how many minor league games did you do before you got this job? And I was well, 0, because that wasn't an opportunity or an option for me. But if you want to start a measuring contest, we can go into how many major league games I've covered over the last 20 years and you didn't cover, you know what I mean? So you just kind of have to in a way, for me, it's just kind of giving it back with humor and then just laughing about it later. So I don't know if that's helpful to answer your question, but that's how I approach it. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's how I've approached it.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Part of DSLC. My name's Abraham.
Awesome.
You told us a little bit about how continuing to iterate and keep growing keeps you relevant and I don't know, not from going into obscurity and losing your job and stuff. So I was kind of wondering what are you working on right now, and what are your goals towards the next couple of years?
I love that. Thanks. Yeah, I think you always have to grow, right? So for me, last year when I got the job with the Athletics, it started as a whirlwind. I got this job, they announced it, and because of the historical headlines of it, I ended up on this crazy media tour and then shoved into the season in a brand new city, working with brand new people on a show I've never worked on, doing a brand new job. I went from the National League to the American League, so many things. I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose every single day, right? I definitely wasn't taking care of myself. like I was pouring everything into this job. And I realized this off season that I had to have space for me personally to grow. So I worked on that a lot this off season, like finding how to mentally be prepared for a long year, as much as like me diving into stats and storylines and building relationships was important. It was also important to like take care of my physical being and like figure out a workout routine again and like dive into my kids' lives and then like get into this season just like way more balanced than last year was. So I did a lot of that, and I think too, you're always working on your craft. Like for me, that's, you know, just how to call certain plays and how to have certain reactive, you know, messaging from my voice, and just growing in that sense. And then relationships, like that'll never end. I think building relationships for me with coaches and players, and then my own teammates, like the person I'm on air with every day, and how we can grow together off camera, so when we're on camera, our chemistry is better and easy and natural. So I think those are things I dive into in the moment, and then really like not getting too far ahead of myself. The season's so long, like a baseball season is 162 games. So just trying to be in the moment, and you know, again, going back to the mental part, I'm working a lot on mentally preparing so that once the game hits, I just feel free to like have enough information in my brain to just be in the game and not like be somewhere else, be in your computer, trying to find a stat, trying to do whatever. Just really being present in the moment. Yeah.
We've got time for one more. So back here.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
My name is Ryan. I was wondering if you had like a favorite, I don't know, like butterfly effect of having opened the door of being the first woman primary broadcaster in MLB history, and then kind of like a follow-up, how important you think representation is in, you know, the future of getting diversity into sports.
That is a really great question. Thank you for asking it. I think for me, like twofold. So one is, again, not like having even dreamed of doing play-by-play. When that door opened and I called my first game in 2018, I had no idea like what the response was gonna be. And I got an email right when I got back to my house from Susan Waldman, who's been calling games for the Yankees for a really long time. And it was just this like moment of support from her that I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know she knew I did that night. And that felt like passing the torch. And then the next phone call I got the next morning was from Melanie Newman, who now calls games for the Baltimore Orioles. And she was in the minor leagues. And she opened my eyes. Like, I didn't even know there were women calling games in the minor leagues at that time. And she called me and left me this voicemail that I'll never forget, and was like, thank you. Like, it was like this sigh of relief out of her voice. I was like, thank you. What you did just like put this stamp on my heart that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's 6 of us right now, 6 of us women calling minor league games, and you just gave us like every hope in the world that we could one day actually make this a career when we didn't know that before. So that was so awesome and so cool, just by that representation of me calling a game. And that was a moment too that I felt like I really have to do this. Whether I really want to do this or not, this now has to be this career path that I take. And that intersected eventually with wanting to do it as well. And then I had a moment last year in San Diego. I often get a lot of dads specifically that come up and like want to introduce their little girl to me, which is so special because my dad introduced sports to me. And so I love those moments. But this other moment happened in San Diego where an older woman was waiting for me. She was like about 70 probably. She was waiting by our team bus and called me over. And she just like grabbed both of my hands and she was like, I've been waiting 50 years to hear my voice in the game I love. And that hit me really hard, that women love baseball. There's a lot of women that love baseball and watch baseball. And I think if you do any sort of study on fans, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, like women are highly represented in spending money in those businesses, right? And going to games, attending games. And you think about even just in baseball specifically, when you go to a little league field, there's a lot of moms taking kids to games. Like they fall in love with the game. And so to feel like the voice is represented now and to be the vessel to do it, like it's, I'm really humbled every day by that. But that moment specifically was cool because I realized it reaches not only the next generation, but I'm also reaching a generation that didn't get to maybe live out a dream they wanted to. Cool. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.